Hi guys, it's Cash, and what I've done is gone through the Aberrus raid and identified the big, the scary, and the sneaky boss abilities and assigned them sound alerts so you can be better prepared. Because if you have ever been caught off guard while tunneling during your cooldowns, or you've blown up the raid because you're staring too hard at those health bars, then you'll understand why having an audio cue could be a game changer. Sound alerts help us be more aware of our surroundings. They can remind us to take mechanics out of the raid so we don't kill our friends. They can let us know when big movement abilities are coming up, so maybe you can hold on to that cooldown for a few more seconds, and they can prepare us for raid-wide damage. But the key with your audio cues is to be consistent, so even if you don't know the fight very well, when you hear a sound, you kind of know what you're meant to be doing. And also not having too many sounds in one encounter. The point of an audio alert is to streamline the fight, not make it feel more chaotic. So this is what I use when I'm assigning sounds, and you can copy mine or you can make up your own, but just remember to be consistent. One of my favorite sounds to use is the bike horn, and I use this predominantly for frontals, but it essentially just means that I need to move or dodge something. The air horn is another favorite sound of mine. I reserve it for mechanics that require a little spatial awareness, usually something that's abrupt or unscripted, or something that will one-shot you, and it essentially just means I need to look up and focus on what's going on. I also use the countdown a lot. This is not a sound alert, this is just a button that you can click in your bigwigs, and I usually use this for burst damage or healing cooldowns, and it's just a way that I have 5 seconds to prepare. The banana peel is a sound that I started using as another sort of heads up that there's some movement going on. It usually means a small move, like drop a puddle somewhere or get out of the way of something. Not something as big and scary as what the bike horn would be assigned to. I use the PvP flag sound alert as a general awareness, so it's usually not a mechanic that will affect me directly, but it's something that I just want to be aware of. And I also use the voice that says run away, and I use that to
run away.
It's just another movement one in case there's more than two. So let's begin at the beginning with Kazzara. One of the burstier abilities on this boss is called Hellsteel Carnage, and it happens at 80%, 60%, and 40% health, so it is an unscripted ability. Kazzara's armor shatters, dealing a big burst of damage to all players, and it spawns floor swirlies for you to dodge. So because it's unscripted, I am going to assign this ability to the air horn. The air horn is something that startles me into focus. The next ability we want to assign a sound to are the dread rifts. You will get marked with a circle, and after 5 seconds you will drop a pool on the ground, and these pools don't disappear, so the placement of them is pretty important. So I do assign this one a sound alert. It's just a banana peel, something for a small movement ability. Also, Rays of Anguish, players are targeted by a beam which follows them and leaves behind a trail of fire, and on Mythic, if you cross these beams, it deals huge damage to the raid. So being pre-spread and aware of your surroundings is important. I'm also going to assign this one the banana peel. I don't think it's going to be confusing because the abilities come one after the other. One of them marks you with a circle, one of them marks you with a beam from the sky, so I think it's totally fine to use the banana peel for both of them. Hellbeam is a lethal frontal aimed at a random player, so we need to look up and make sure she hasn't turned around to face us, so no second guessing, this one gets the bike horn. And finally, Wings of Extinction. It deals a burst of raid damage, knocks all players back, and applies a 20-second dot to everyone. Whether you're a healer or you're a DPS, you want to make sure you're not positioned near an edge or close to any dread rifts when the pushback happens. And as a healer specifically, this is where I want to use either cooldowns or ramp up for some healing. So I am going to assign the countdown sound, making sure I have 5 seconds to get in a good position, put out some echoes or whatever it is that your class does, and I'm going to top those healing meters. Just kidding. The shaman always tops the healing meters. And that's it for Kazzara. Next is the Amalgamation Chamber, where in phase 1 you fight 2 elementals separately with their own abilities, and in phase 2 you just have one boss and the abilities have now merged. So both bosses have a few mechanics each, but we're only going to assign a couple of abilities, audio cues, and that way it keeps the encounter nice and streamlined. So if you're on the Shadow Elemental, Shadow's Convergence spawns orbs around the room and they move towards the boss, and they deal damage to anyone they touch. So I assign this the bike horn because they often spawn behind you and then they move pretty quickly inwards. So it's a good idea to look up and locate them as quickly as you can and get out of the way. On the fire elemental side, the fiery meteor is assigned the countdown, as this ability needs to be soaked and damage is split between all players. It's a good time to ramp up for healing or pop a defensive. And for phase 1, I have saved the air horn audio cue for the swirling flame ability. The boss turns towards a random person and launches a wave of fire tornadoes. That's like 5 fire tornadoes, and they come out pretty quickly, and they also end up heading across the room towards the other team that's got the shadow elementals. So even if you're not on the fire boss, I like to have the air horn sound so I can look up and make sure that the tornadoes have been baited to the right side, and if they haven't, I can at least get out of the way of those as well. In phase 2, we have Gloom Conflagration. I don't know how to pronounce that. Gloom Conflag. We have Gloom Conflagration. And it combines the fiery meteor soak from phase 1 with the shadow elemental's ability Coalescing Void, which does drop off damage. So you first need to run into the boss to soak the meteor, and then run away quickly to take reduced damage from the explosion that follows. So if you're now playing a game where you're trying to guess the assignment, I hope you were thinking that I would assign the countdown to this ability. It's a chance to use healing cooldowns, but it also requires high movement, so you do want to be prepared for it. Next, we have Shadow Flame Burst, which is a frontal ability. However, on this occasion, I am going to assign it the banana peel sound because I want to use the bicorn on something more serious, which is Blistering Twilight. This is when multiple players are marked with a circle, and after 6 seconds, they explode, they drop a big puddle, and they also launch a few fire tornadoes across the room. I hate these fire tornadoes, and the bicorn sound is a reminder to check yourself. Even if you don't have the mechanic, you need to look up and see if you're in the path of any oncoming tornadoes. They do interrupt you, knock you back, and deal damage. And that's it for the Amalgamation Chamber. Onto the Forgotten Experiments, where one of the differences between Heroic and Mythic is that on Mythic, when a boss reaches 50%, the next boss joins the fight. So because of this, I'm going to set up the assignments as if it was for the Mythic encounter, which means that the sound effects won't overlap between the first and second boss and the second and third boss. First off, Neldris, he's the first boss, does a massive slam, which is a frontal cone aimed at a random player. So this one, I'm going to assign the bicorn sound. He also does Rending Charge. So if you think of Remordia from the Sire Denathrius fight, he marks a few players and he dashes through them, applying a permanent bleed to them and anyone else hit. So you need to make sure that you're away from the group, but you're also standing with the other marked players. So for this, I'm going to assign the banana peel just for that small movement. And Bellowing Roar does fall off damage to the whole raid depending on how far away you are from him. So it makes sense to add the runaway sound alert for this ability, which is very relevant here because I want to run away. The second boss casts Unstable Essence, which applies a dot when it is dispelled. It jumps from one player to another. On normal and mythic, it also drops a pretty big circle that explodes after a few seconds, and then it also spawns an ad that needs to be nuked down because it casts explosion over and over. So on mythic, the dot never goes away. I really only just want to be aware that this ability is coming out, so I'm just going to give it the PvP flag sound. Now, the big bang of this encounter is the Violent Eruption. It's a channel that does huge raid-wide damage, and if any ads are still alive at the time, they also pulse raid-wide damage. So I'm going to add a countdown here so I can be ready to heal, press defensives, and help DPS any leftover ads before the Violent Eruption starts. Finally, Rionthus, he's the third boss. He has a few, and that is probably not how you pronounce his name, but he has a few tricky abilities, but the only one I'm going to assign a sound alert to is Deep Breath. So he goes up and he flies in a straight line lengthways across the room twice, and this really, really hurts, and I'm pretty sure it one-shots you on Mythic. So I'm going to put the air horn here, which means to literally look up and be aware of my surroundings, pick a lane, and dodge twice. Remember to dodge twice. Next, we've got the Assault of the Zaquali. So on normal and heroic, you are dealing with Kagni and his ads, and on mythic, there's also a Phoenix that gets added into the mix. So let's go through the heroic mechanics and the sound alerts for that first, and then we'll add in the sound for the mythic abilities at the end. So in the fight, you are split into two groups. You are fighting ads, and Kagni jumps between the two groups, north and south, by using an ability called called Devastating Leap. A circle indicates where he's going to land, and anyone hit is knocked back and takes massive damage. So the PvP flag sound is fine here. It's just so I can be aware, and all I have to do is move out of that large circle. Kagni casts Heavy Cudgel, which is a frontal aimed at the tank, and although after the frontal, rocks also fall on the platform. So I do just want to assign the banana peel to this so I can be aware of my positioning and also remind myself to go pick up these rocks. So that's pretty much it for Kagni until phase 2, but the adds, there are a few here that we can put some sounds on. We've got the Magma Mystic cast Molten Barrier, and this one here is your healing check and your DPS check. So the Mystic gets a shield and it causes ramping raid damage until that shield is broken. So here I use the countdown so I can ramp up for my healing, have my cooldowns in order, and if I have to or need to, I can also help DPS that shield down. There are also adds called Obsidian Guards, and they cast Volcanic Shield, which is not an appropriate name at all for a beam on a random player. So when you get it, you're marked by an arrow and it deals damage to anyone hit in its path. So for this one, I'm going to add the bicorn sound instead of the frontal because it's on a random target. So it's an ability you may need to move out of, whereas Heavy Cudgel, which is the frontal, is aimed at the tank, and the tank really shouldn't aim it at you. And that's it for phase 1 on Heroic. On Mythic, though, we've got a Phoenix. Her name is Ignara, and she alternates between the north and the south platforms, casting Vigorous Gale, which deals damage and pushes you towards the edge of the platform. Now, this is a positioning ability with only moderate damage, but it happens at the same time as the Magma Shields from the Mystic. So you've got huge damage going out, you're trying to pump your healing cooldowns, everyone's popped their DPS cooldowns, and you're also being pushed towards the edge of the platform. It doesn't interrupt you, but it does just slowly push you further and further off the edge. So for this one, I just assign it the air horn. It will come alongside the countdown, so it doesn't really matter, but I do want to remember that that's the mythic change, and I don't want to get pushed off the edge. I don't want to be like halfway through my Emerald Communion and then just like slide over the edge. So air horn for that one. There's like 100 other things going on in this fight, but we've covered the important ones that can get you killed, so we'll just now take a look at phase 2. When Kagni reaches 100 energy, he casts Catastrophic Slam at the door, which needs to be soaked to split the damage. So I'm going to give this one the bicorn so I can move into position when it's my turn. You wanna take turns, because on Mythic you get a vulnerability dot. And finally, we've got Flaming Cudgel, which is the upgrade of the phase 1 Heavy Cudgel. It's a frontal aimed at the tank. However, immediately afterwards, all players are marked with a circle and they explode, and you deal big damage to everyone. Even if you're not touching, it's still big damage. So we do need to pre-spread, and we need to prepare for the incoming damage. So I assign this one the countdown so I can position, and also the air horn, because that's really the only other scary thing happening in phase 2. And that's it. So Rashok the Elder is much simpler in terms of what we need to assign sounds to. His main ability is Searing Slam, which targets a random player and then he pounces on top of them. This drops a permanent lava pool and does burst damage. From then on, that lava pool will also shoot out waves of lava for you to dodge. So I'm going to assign the Air Horn to this ability, as it's one of the major raid-wide damaging abilities in phase 1. There is also a mythic mechanic called Overcharge, but we can't make a sound alert for that, so we're just going to be aware of this one. Make sure we're placing the lava pools in the right spot and preparing for those lava waves that come out. If you are planning ahead for Mythic, though, you can also keep an eye on Unleash Shadow Flame. So Unleash Shadow Flame is when 2 orbs spawn somewhere in the room, and if they both explode, it will wipe the raid. So if you're targeted by Searing Slam, you need to make sure that you are standing on top of an orb, so when he pounces on you, he destroys one of the orbs. So for this one, I'm just going to assign the PvP flag sound. It's just to remind myself to look up and locate the orbs in case I do get the Searing Slam mechanic on me. Charged Smash is a soak ability. If not enough players stand in the soak to split the damage, everyone dies, and the more players that soak the smash, the less energy Rashok gains, which is good. So I'm going to assign this the countdown and the bicorn sound, so I can be ready to move in or out of the soak depending on my assignment. And the final ability to assign a sound to is Doom Flames, which spawn small circles all over the room to be soaked. If these are missed, it is a bad time for everyone, so I'm going to give this the good old banana peel sound, although the graphic for this one is pretty obvious. that's pretty much it for Rashok. The intermission phase is ramping raid white damage, it's swellies on the ground. I don't think that really needs anything assigned to it though. And that's it for part 1 of this little mini-series I'm putting together. I will release the last 4 bosses a bit later on. I'm just in the process of moving house and I didn't want to delay this any more than I already did. So thank you so much for watching, and now I have this. Gloom Conflagration. I've said it too many times. I can't pronounce it and now it's lost all meaning. We have...